we are in the third segment of the Amtgard Leadership University. We're going to be talking pretty broad topics, journal discussion, and then expand a little bit more into long-term planning and some different things that your perspectives from your experiences could really benefit lands regardless of where they're at currently, but what will get them to their next step, whether it's more attendance, better battle games, whatever you want to define best as is going to be in your interpretation. So we'll start with Cord. If you just do a quick introduction, spend a couple minutes of some highlights of things you want to convey, and then we'll use that as we go down the line to base further conversation.
Okay, absolutely. So my name is Cord. I'm from the Iron Mountains. I've played since 1995. I was knighted as a Crown Knight in 2009, and then as a Flame Knight in 2014. As far as some of the background for me, I have been very active in leadership in the Iron Mountains. I've run Rackus 3 times. I was also one of the members of the V8 committee. So I have a lot of experience with long-term planning with regard to events and V8, which was a 4-year-long project that we actually had complete. As far as stuff that I would like to convey here, since it's more of a general discussion, I really wanted to just see what sort of questions we actually get, if I answer there. But I also wanted to kind of touch base on some mundane things that may actually really help you with regard to long-term planning. If you are interested in getting experience with like project management or anything like that outside of Amtgard, Amtgard has been wonderful for me in my own personal career in actually giving me a lot of project management experience that I've then been able to parlay into what I actually do in real life as well. And then I can use that experience from real life to come back to Amtgard, and it's just kind of this revolving cycle. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about.
Randall?
My name is Randall Andalsa. I'm from Dragonspine. I've been playing since 1992. And I'm really excited about this sort of panel, especially the general discussion aspect of it, because this is sort of just what we like doing in our spare time, talking shop about Amtgard. This is like driving to an event, people ask some questions about the game, and I'm excited to hear what we have to talk about. Like Cord, I also have a project management background, and there's a lot of ways you can use that in Amtgard to make things go more smoothly and more efficiently. So if and when we do get to the long-term planning part of this, I think there's some things we can add there too.
My name is Michael Hammer of God. I started in December '88. I've done all kinds of awesome things in Amtgard. It's enriched my life. And the thing that I would focus on most, and I'm not going to only talk about this, but I sort of think it answers a lot of your long-term planning, is you should dare to dream big. You should think, what's bigger, stronger, cooler I can do for Amtgard, and then think how to do it. Instead of thinking what you can't do because of how. Dream big, and I will minimize the self-aggrandizement, but the fact is, because we dream big, I've been part of the team that invented the biggest event in Amtgard twice, 2 different times, because we said, there's no reason we can't do this. We can make it bigger, we can make it cooler. So that's what I'll focus on.
Gorin, and I've been playing Amtgard since 2000. Baby of the group, I guess, here a little bit. I'd like to put this out there and hopefully get you guys to put some questions out, but I'd like to potentially discuss embracing technology to bring up our group, and I don't mean social media, which is what everybody thinks of. I mean, accounting, engaging your governments and and community organizations, how to maintain the treasury and to build your group's infrastructure so that you have the ability to grow into not just a social club, but a true organization. Some of the things that we might touch on, like my part, or my principality, we have a liquor license. We have statewide insurance for every member that plays. We have several fundraisers that bring in tens of thousands of dollars a year. And we're in the middle of almost finished with the stuff we need to get our charitable gaming license. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do to make the rest of the world pay for Amtgard for you, which is really cool, and what organizations like ours need to do to really thrive and succeed, because most of our members don't have a lot of money.
Okay, so I'm going to get the ball rolling with a couple of the questions we were asked online to get ready for this and see where conversation goes. A big one has been through, now this is our third panel today, has been talking about having a core. Maybe it was the core group to help get the part going. Maybe it was your reliance on certain officers to run battle games, right? And just how integral that can be. And sometimes maybe how they can be taken for granted. So a big challenge that a lot of parks have is, how do you shift from 3 or 4 people doing everything to the next generation of leadership? How do I cultivate tomorrow's leaders? Because I want to enjoy Amtgard without work again. We're going to start at Court, and we'll leapfrog around a little bit.
So that is probably one of the most difficult questions that I've encountered over the past 20 years of being in Amtgard. I actually went 10 years in Amtgard without doing anything with regard to leadership. I just decided I was leading it. It wasn't until about 2005 that I started actually stepping up and becoming one of the leaders. And the reason why I did that was because I saw the people ahead of me getting so burned out on everything that they were doing, because they were the only ones doing it. And I felt it necessary for me to actually step up. What I didn't feel like I had there was actually a lot of encouragement to step up from those people. And that's actually what really I've tried to do in the Iron Mountains is when I see somebody who I think has the potential to be a leader, I will go up and I will highlight that for them. It's like, hey, I noticed you did this great job with this thing, running this battle. Or even, it doesn't necessarily have to be them doing a service aspect. It's just, you know what, when you're actually out there on the field, you take charge of this group and really help usher them towards success. Have you considered trying to actually shift gears a little bit and maybe do that outside of the battle game arena? Maybe do something to actually start building this park and really make sure that you're making them recognize that their leadership has been seen and that it's appreciated and that there are further steps that they can actually take if they're actually willing to engage and step up and begin leading. And I've had a lot of success doing that in the Iron Mountains, just basically saying, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? I've seen you do this, you're great at it, why don't we try something new? So I find that actually really helpful.
Randall?
It was absolutely a challenge to try to integrate people in, to try to go from just being the few people that are running things to getting more of a crowd involved in that. And we've had to do that in a few ways at our park and at our kingdom. And one of the things that we did is we actually just sat down with everyone at the park. We got everyone in a meeting. We talked about what it is that everyone wanted from Amtgard and how they could get the things that they wanted by helping other people get the things that they wanted. And that worked quite well. It not only got everyone to realize that Amtgard was more than just their focus, they realized that if I want more ditching, then I gotta help battle games happen too, because then they'll come do my ditching with me. But we were also able to identify the leaders in that organization at that time to figure out the ones that were the drivers and the ones that wanted to make things happen. I've also done some things when in office where I treat it the same way that I treat employees at work. We have it built in. We have an evaluation structure built into Amtgard, but most people deploy it really poorly, and that is awards that you get at the end of your term. Mostly, the time you find out whether you did a good or a bad job is, do you get an award or not when you step down, and that's it. And that's pretty bad, because that's your one evaluation. I've had officers who were new to the job where we met multiple times over the course of the reign. I gave them feedback on what they were doing, and I said, based on your performance right now, this is the award I'm going to give when you're done. And if you keep on this track, this is what you're going to get. And if that changed, I let them know along the way. Because I think a good management practice is you don't hear you did a bad job when your job's already done. You hear that along the way so you can correct. And I think that's a way that you can bring people into it without them doing the job and then failing, because no one told them they were failing, and they don't get an award and then they quit. That happens a lot, and I think we can avoid that.
Michael, I want to tailor it a little bit for you because you talked about the event success. And I think sometimes we're talking a lot today about park leadership. So how do you do that whenever it gets, how do you maintain the success of those two things into the next generation of our
So I can definitely talk about events, and I'd like to. I want to really briefly make the point I wanted about park leadership, just because I think there's I think Amtgard, our crazy Amtgard forebearers, actually gave us a great structure for this, and that we don't embrace it enough.
Okay.
Like, the downside of changing leadership every 6 months is that you don't have continuity. The upside is there's a chance for everybody, okay? Which means not only do your old guys need to step back and let the new people go, but your new people need to have it communicated to them that you're going to get a chance to run for 6 months our game, because everybody does. And I am in 2 other organizations that are similar to Amtgard in that way. Well, not anymore, but I was a Boy Scout, which does the exact same thing. Every single scout knows he's going to be a patrol leader or a senior patrol leader if he sticks around long enough. And they go in knowing that. And the Masons are the same way. Everybody's going to be master of his lodge if he cares enough to stay in and work at it. And I want Amtgarders to know that. And I tell the kids who come join my park, your turn's coming. See what we're doing and then see how you want to do it. And I believe that needs to be culturally part of Amtgard. And we're not good at telling people it needs to be. Because most of these people have ideas of how they want to do it better, but they're afraid they'll never get the chance. And there's certainly some who don't want to, but if they know that everybody's expected to, they're more likely to buy it. Anyway, let me ask you a question about events, and I'm sorry I got distracted.
No, you're good. In fact, I'm gonna come back to you for events.
Okay,
Because you
perfect.
keyed in on something that's interesting, because I even looked at the way I asked the question. I thought it was interesting that you talked about how they're gonna get the opportunity versus sometimes we treat it as the burden. And I think that perspective may say like, and again, just looking at my question, and I really, I think that's where foot stomping, that you are, and it's not just a sales pitch, it's, hey, you honestly get an opportunity to lead. And I really appreciate that perspective.
I mean, that's the way I see it, and that's the way I want to coach the guys in my park and in my principality. Everybody's going to get a chance. Figure out, watch the other guy, watch what he's doing. When you come and tell me, hey, this prince is really screwing the dog, I want to say, okay, here's how you figure out how to do better. Now you can go talk to him and then try and convince him to do better, but store it away. Your turn is coming.
Gorin? No problem. Those are all, I mean, really good things. So one of the things that is important to me is that our established leaders, part of their responsibility is to foster leadership. And just like everything we do in Amtgard, we're taking people who don't necessarily have any leadership skills whatsoever, trying to find a way to put them in charge of a park or an organization that we want to be run very, very professional, right? So that's a challenge. And you know, there's about a year ago, I was actually asked by your squire why I never volunteered to be team captain. And I said, well, because that's the very first rung on the leadership ladder. I've done that. I want other people to step up, because that's where I start to identify people who are potential guild masters and who are going to be potential reeves, champions, GMRs, and start going up that ladder. So that by the time they say, I want to run this park with its $7,000 a year budget and 200 active members, I want to run it. It's not the first thing they've ever done. And they're confident and they make good choices, and when they leave the park, they're proud, and when they step down, they're proud of where they're leaving it. They're handing a burning torch to the next guy that means something to them. They're much more inclined to not only do it again, but to continue that chain of fostering good, professional, positive leadership. So I think that's really important. And to kind of touch on what you were just saying, that's a huge part of our leadership culture, is that we don't talk about leadership in a negative way. We don't say, oh, I've got to run this event again, and it sucks that I have to do this, and nobody else is helping me, and approaching it that way, because then nobody wants to help, and nobody wants to take it over, because it looks like it's horrible, it's torture. So when I step down from office, or when the other members of our leaders of our park step down from office, we generally are, we generally try to approach it from we're really sad to step down, we had a great time, we look forward to do it again, and we can't wait to see what the next guy has, rather than, oh, I'm done, I'm out, which you see a lot in the Amtgard coronation ceremonies. They're like, my turn's done, and they just like run away. I think that's kind of the funny, culturally acceptable thing to do. And that's, if you see that in your park, that's something that you need to change, because nobody wants to step up for a job that other people are running away from.
Okay, so now let's talk autocrat. How do I nurture that?
So, I nurture it very much like Gorin was saying, one rung at a time, one thing at a time. Meaning, in a small event, I will give a small job to literally anyone who asks for it. If it's an event I expect 50 people to show up for, and somebody says they want to run gate, I'm probably willing to let them organize and run gate. Gate has money issues, so it's not totally unimportant. But on a small event, it's a job that has a reasonable and defined scope. It's a good place for somebody to cut their teeth. Same with a small feast at a small event. If you get to something bigger, it works the same way. And in fact, even to get to something like Keith, literally the first year at Keith, I took people whose Amtgard's award suggested that they were extremely good at service. They had lots of them. And I said, okay, you get to start with one quest. If it's good, we'll get you something bigger later. And I gave the big feast to somebody I personally knew and trusted, because that event, that's the biggest and most risk fraught part. It's the most expensive. It's the most likely to get messed up. Same with Warcraft. That's the second one. It's not as expensive, but it affects fun more directly. So those two, Those went to people I knew personally, I'd already worked with, I'd already seen their work on gigantic level events. People who came to me and said, I've got 7 roses and I've done this, this, and this for my kingdom. And I'm like, okay, I've never seen that, and you seem like a pretty nice person. I like you, I want to make you part of this team. You gotta start at the bottom. We gotta find out. And some of them did very well. There are others who did not get invited back the next year, and that doesn't mean they're bad people. I basically say, look, your quest wasn't as good as it needed to be. I'd love to have you back on the Keep team. Go back and work on Rising Winds quests. Do more Rising Winds Night quests. Figure out how to solve your problem. And more than that, I told him specifically what parts of his process weren't good enough, and in what ways his organizational sloppiness had impacted the overall fun of that game. And I don't know to what extent he took it. You know, you got people who are complacent. You got people who are hungry. And the answer is, you never know until you feed somebody who's aware. But there's this whole lot in event running, the same as there is in leadership. And you want to work people through it. And there are certainly times that is unfair to a person. There are people who are capable of running a 200-person event for the first thing they've ever done in Amtgard, and running it well. And those people, if you make them break their teeth on smaller stuff, that's kind of unfair in some ways. I get it, but there's no way to do it.
No, I think it helps. Sometimes we get so, we even fall victim to, wow, they've got a lot of enthusiasm and talk a good game, and then all of a sudden, they just don't have the skill set to pull it off. Randall, I'm going to throw this one at you guys. This one was also one that we got online. So we've got an individual, they're trying to step up in their area and be a leader, but they're having a difficult time making that transition of having people see them as a leader. How do they convince people to trust and follow their leadership? I'm going to stop there. There's more to the question, but that's some of it.
Sure. It's a really good question, and it's an important question because a lot of Amtgarders have an idea, and I think a lot of people in general have an idea that the way to become a leader is to be granted a title that says you're a leader, and that really isn't the case. People who are suddenly champion of their park or their sheriff of their park and they think, right now I'm in charge, people will listen to me. It's not going to happen. And the way to do that, the way to get listened to, is to build trust, that other people trust you to be able to do a good job. So before you decide you want to put a hat on and say that I'm in charge, you need to get good at something, get good enough at something that people are going to trust your ability and rely on you. You can't be a leader if you are incapable of doing anything. So find some skill, develop your skills, find something that you're enthusiastic about, do it well. People will begin to expect that you're the kind of person that can learn how to do things and do them capably, and then they will follow you. So I think that's the first thing you want to do. Get good at something.
I agree with every single one of those. One thing that I've actually noticed for a lot of people is they try to step into those leadership type of positions, so they try to actually get noticed very subtly. Okay? Subtlety does not work terribly well. Okay? If you really want to step up and lead, and if you want to actually get into office, I would absolutely suggest follow everything he just said. But if you still feel like you're not being noticed, communicate. Go up to these people, talk to them, be explicit. I want to help lead. Give me something to do. Okay, be willing to start at the bottom and work your way up, because that's going to be one of the best ways that you can actually build that trust. But if you're not able to actually communicate your interest in leading to people, chances are the leaders have so many things that they're focusing on, they're probably not going to notice, okay? You don't want to necessarily slap them in the face, but metaphorically, you want to put yourself out there and say, listen, I am willing to help, I am capable of doing so, please give me the chance.
Just to rip off that real briefly, people sort of assume that folks that are in charge in Amtgard are sort of on the aware, and that any decision that they've made is with full information. Cord's right, often people are just busy, they don't know, that's why it's important to ask.
Gordon, you wanted to
I just
ask?
wanted to just throw in a real quick thing there too. A lot of people fall into the false idea that they have to be in office to do anything. And I'd say right now, the things that I've contributed to Amtgard that I'm the most proud of were done when I was not in office. When I'm in office, I'm too busy running the park to create a new event or things like that. So don't be afraid to just do. Also, to say, hey, I want to run a camping event. I'll take care of all the logistics, etc. Can you just advertise it for me and let people know what's going to happen? And just do it. And if it's great, they'll have no problem letting you run the next event. I mean, it's a chance to get out there and again, kind of build that trust by demonstrating that you have the skills, but don't be afraid to just do. And, you know, I like to replace that whole, like, if you want people to see you as a runner, run. Get better at running by running, you know, and.
Well, and I think, I agree with all three of them, and I think it plays into my theme. Dream big, okay? When you're saying, well, I want to take on more responsibility, well, the best way to do it is to take it. Now, Randall's point about you have to get good, well, you can't take responsibility without getting good. So you're 100% correct. But the fact is, if you're good, and I want to not insult us as a society, but the fact is, we're all volunteers. This is all our second priority. So you're good doesn't mean you have to be professionally good. It doesn't mean you have to be good enough to be paid a big salary for doing this. It means you have to be good enough to be valuable to this organization, which does require good, but it doesn't require an impossible level of good. Almost everybody in our game can achieve the level of good we need with effort. Okay? So I want to be clear, when Randall says get good, he's not saying, well, some of you won't make it. Or I don't know if he is, but I'm not.
And it's not even just good at the thing you're hoping to do. If someone wants to run events and you've already demonstrated that, you know what, I've mass-produced tunics and I made them according to a pretty decent level, I've shown that I can do this kind of thing, that stuff crosses over.
Absolutely.
So just have some capability. People who are incapable don't get to run things.
Right. Corey, you wanted to?
I wanted to take a slight tangent to this question. We talked about kind of getting noticed by the leadership. Everybody runs into situations where maybe there are just personality conflicts with the leadership. And you're trying to get noticed and the leadership really has no interest in noticing. Okay? That's the point where what they've actually been saying about just lead, just do it, is incredibly important. Okay? If you want to get out there and start writing battle maps, don't ask for permission to write battle maps. Write a battle map. Find somebody at the park who's pretty well recognized for being good with battle games. Ask them to review it. Get feedback. Go back. Review that again. Write, scratch it right from scratch if you have to. Just keep at it. Write a good battle game. Eventually, if the leadership doesn't really like you or isn't really willing to recognize you, they're going to be forced to if you kind of create that excellence and get to the point where everybody else is going to want you to do it. So the leadership's going to have to actually let them have your chance.
People lead your park. That's what the power is.
And you don't need an office to do that.
Right.
This panel is a really good example of that. Goldcrest has no job that says panel organizer. You want him to do it, so he did it. You don't need an office.
So Randall, here's one for you, and then I'm sure we'll end up bouncing around. But so what course of action do you recommend for players if they think, if they feel like the officers are in that mode of just good enough? They want more, they're begging for more out of their leadership, and leadership's not responsive, or at least not meeting their needs as they see them. What can a player do when they're not getting what they want out of their leadership?
That is a really good question, and it's sort of a challenge because it depends on what you want out of Amtgard. I'm going to answer that question with the assumption that the person who sees a park and is not happy with the way it's being run, or maybe they're happy but it could be better, I'm going to go with the assumption that that person is also interested in running things too. Because if you're not interested in fixing things yourself and you just don't like the way it's going, that's a little bit harder to fix. But if you are interested in running things and you're capable of what you're doing, I have not seen a park in Amtgard yet where a person can't get elected if they have really good ideas and they can mobilize people. And this isn't just put your name out there and hope for the best. If a person really has good ideas and they like to translate them into the leadership of their organization, they have to become that leadership of that organization, which means they've got to talk to people, they have to ask people for their votes, they have to make sure people are dues paid. You have to mobilize and get involved and take charge yourself. That's the trick.
Gorin? Really, it just comes back to if you don't like what you see, again, you change it. You don't have to be in leadership to do it, although that's a really great way to kind of get your ideas out there. It's much easier to run an event if you're Monarch. But if you're not, again, you get a handful of people to support you. All thing is your power base. So if you can convince 51% of your people that your idea is the right one, it's the right one. And so just mobilize those people and do it. Become a leader without office. That's just an administrative task list is all your office is. So just get out there and lead.
Did anybody else want to add?
No, they hit the two key words.
I'm going to throw this out there, and whoever wants to take it, raise their hand. Actually, I'll call it. Any thoughts on an apprentice program for leadership? Thank you.
So, first, I I'm a big fan of it. Apprenticing and training, mentoring in our game is one of the things that I think we're good at. I think we actually do well in this game, and I'm a big believer in. And doing it in a separate structure for leadership is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Although we have a lot of structures for it already. We have squires, we have fighting companies, we have groupings of various kinds where you associate with mentors of various kinds. Fighting class guilds. There's just a lot of mentoring that goes on, and a separate one for leadership. There's time for it, and I will certainly reach out to a leader who I think can respond to some hints and some help in a good way, even if he's not my squire, maybe somebody else's squire. On the other hand, if my squire is working on leadership, I feel not only is it my obligation to reach out to him, but if there's something where I can't help him, it's my obligation to hook him up with Randall or somebody else who's good at the skills I'm not good at, and say, here's what my guy's trying to work through, help him through it. So it's take that mentorship that exists elsewhere and apply it to leadership. Now again, I think there's a role for both, but because we're good at mentoring, and a lot of our people like the social connection. It's what the value they get out of Amtgard. It means that there's a lot of role for this mentoring to work and to be positive.
Yeah. So not to disparage what Mike says a little bit there, I feel that it's really important for a successful organization to find mentorship programs outside of companies and beltwines. I think that in general, those two concepts are considered exclusive, and they turn a lot of people off because they feel like they're not cool enough to be belted, or
Almost intimidating, maybe?
almost intimidating. So we already have fighter practices. That's a pretty common thing across Amtgard. A&S nights, collegiums, whatever you want to call them, are pretty common across Amtgard. What's not common is anybody who's interested in being a leader, come hang out at this workshop. That's why I'm really glad to see something like this. You know, in our park, we hold an annual event called Grand Academy, where leadership lectures are a huge part of it. We encourage all of our officers to look outside of their normal social Amtgard connections while they're in office to spur on them in leadership, and to find that really quiet, shy guy who's got fantastic ideas and who 2 years from now will make an amazing monarch, and to cultivate that. While they may not be your page or squire or whatever, it's really important to find that and to fan that flame. So we have so many other ways to do that for other, venues.
So it almost sounds like you're encouraging the same approach. I mean, if you see somebody out there in the ditch line that's wrecking you, a lot of times they're happy to share the conversation. So almost the same thing, right?
Right.
People, leadership especially, should feel comfortable to share, and people, for lack of a better term, the followers should feel comfortable approaching leadership for advice.
And it's like we've talked about now, learning to be a good fighter, learning to be a good artisan, and learning to be good leadership is an incremental process. Somebody's got to, a lot of times, a lot of folks need help taking those first couple of steps, and then they're good, they're sold, they're in it, they're focused, they're determined, and they'll become amazing. But, I mean, I don't know, most of the sword knights I've met became that way because they found a few guys that were really good at fighting, and maybe had one mentor who was really amazing and helped kind of push them along, and they bought into the culture, and off they went. Leadership means that same thing.
So one of the things that we've been trying to do in the Iron Mountains with limited success is really kind of doing an apprenticeship type of program with regard to our events. For instance, for Rakis, we're trying to actually have an autocrat like a craft for a specific area, war a craft, use the craft, something like that. And then actually having somebody else basically tag along with them and learn the entire process as an apprentice, so that hopefully they'll be able to step up and take over. This has worked really well in some areas. In some areas, it hasn't really worked well. I've found that apprenticeship programs really require an amazing amount of work and just ability to recognize what you're doing as a mentor. And that's something that I think, at least in the Iron Mountains, we need to actually get better about, is showing our mentors how to actually mentor people. Because a lot of times it sounds like what has happened in a lot of these instances is people are like, oh, now I've got a lackey to be able to do all the grunt work. Or some people, instead of actually engaging the apprentice and actually bringing them into the fold, end up just kind of making the decisions themselves and leaving the apprentice on the sideline. I personally am guilty of this in some of these instances. So mentorship programs they're wonderful things if you can implement them properly. But being a mentor requires a very specific mindset and a constant recognition of the fact that you need to actually be in that mentor role. that I know we're still kind of working on.
No, I think that's a great point.
Well, I think there's another half of this, and I don't condemn new people for feeling this way. It's very easy. But you end up with the mentees feeling the same way, where it's not so much that they don't like the mentor leaving them out. Nobody likes that. But they don't like the mentor telling them how to do it. Like, this is a shared responsibility. Why are you telling me how to do it? Now, if you've got it real formal and they've agreed to be mentored, that's fantastic. But typically, the best mentoring relationships aren't that formal. You're basically giving them some hints. So then you end up, you've got the right people. It's particularly tough in events and situations like what Ken's talking about, because anything less than the whole event or the biggest feast doesn't necessarily take two people. So putting two people on, if you don't clearly have one in charge, you may have this. And that's not to say there's not a role for mentoring. I believe in it strongly, and I'm not saying against it. I'm just saying that's the thing you have to be careful about, because not only does it bite if the mentor is doing a poor job, like Kent was talking about can happen, but it works the other way. And you can't blame the mentee for handling it poorly. To some extent, if they're a mentee, it's not their responsibility. It's your responsibility to make that relationship positive more than theirs. But the fact is, it happens both ways.
So let's talk a little bit about the strain of mentorship or leadership. Each one of you obviously have a pretty exhaustive list of leadership, countless years. What advice do you give to overstressed and discouraged leaders? Anyone?
The very first thing I say to breathe. Take a minute, breathe. You know, we get ramped up in the negativity, which is it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. We get a little discouraged about something. We focus on discouragement. It taints everything else that we do, going forward. And sometimes you just got to stop, take a deep breath, refocus, find that thing in Amtgard sometimes that re-energizes what you're doing, gives you a fresh outlook, and then re-engage. And if you're constantly trying to build people up around you that help you execute, your leadership skill set, it's much easier to not get discouraged. But it happens, and you get burnt out, and you got to find a way to step back safely so that everything you built doesn't crash down. And to do that, and so, but that's the first thing I tell everyone: just breathe for a minute, relax. Mike?
So, first, I think Gorin hit the number one point, which it's a lot like when I've got a trainee on training to fight. I say concentrate on what you love about fighting. It's the same with leadership. You want to be in charge of Amtgard? Concentrate on what you love about Amtgard. The way to avoid burnout we're all in this game because we love it. You avoid burnout by working on that. Yes, you've got to take your responsibilities seriously, and you've got to do the job. But if you're concentrating on how awesome it's going to make Amtgard, or how much fun this is going to be, or how cool it's going to be when you see your friend with a big smile after you give him this award, or how fantastic it's going to be when you have all these people come from far away to your super cool event. Focus on the awesome stuff, because that makes the drudgery easy. And drudgery is too strong a word. Not a lot of what we do is really that drudgery, I don't feel like, but some of it is. There's detailed work that people don't like, and there's always parts of it that some people don't like. So I'm big on focus on what you love.
I can give one tip. And there was a reign that Azrael Jade and I did several years ago for Dragon's Spine. It was an Alice in Wonderland reign. It was a lot of fun. It was also a ton of work. We started working on it months in advance. And we sort of knew that we were going to have those weekends where we were just like run down because we'd just been going full speed for so long. This sort of happened accidentally, but something that we took away from that is we had one guy named Balder, who was at this event, we shut him down, who was, I think he was 16 at the time, and his basic role was, we would occasionally throw out quick props we needed to have him make. That was great, that was what he was supposed to be doing. The thing we actually ended up doing on top of that is he was the guy that every single week said, hey, what are we doing this week? What are we doing this week? And we would always make sure we had an answer for him. He was our little inspiration, he was our co-conspirator guy that just prodded us every week to remind us that there are people out there waiting to have a good time, and we're the ones making it happen, and there was no reason for us not to have a good answer. So find someone that does that for you.
Engage a newbie, man. Something that will help you rebuild your focus and love for Amtgard, and watching a newbie's eyes just light up at something you're passionate about.
So I think they covered a lot of the thoughts that I was kind of coming in with that. And it seems like a lot of what we kind of talked about here with regard to getting burnt out is kind of overwork. But overwork's really only half the picture for when people actually end up getting discouraged or frustrated or anything like that. A lot of it is also facing adversity. People don't actually agree with your position. They're going to fight you, okay? And that's kind of a constant thing that you see in leadership, is not everybody's going to agree with the way you're actually approaching things. And that can really, cause people to burn out as well. I feel like that's actually a little bit more difficult one, and I'd like to actually have that question kind of posed to this panel here, is in that sort of situation, when it's not one where you're getting burned out from overwork, but you're getting burned out from, butting heads and that sort of thing. What do you actually do about that?
I'd cry sometimes.
What's the hiding and crying over with Michael O.G.?
You can't see trembling face.
So the fact is, Gorin's not wrong. But one of the solaces that I take in those hide and cry moments, the time when I'm just frustrated and I feel like I can't get through this guy or this group of people, and that my program is not working because I'm failing to get through, is the thing I talked about. Like, we do pay a price for our short terms of office, but that's another advantage. Their turn is coming, and maybe they do know better than me. I mean, I'm pretty arrogant. I think I'm good at this game, but I have to constantly remind myself that maybe they do know better than me. They might actually have a better idea for what's good for our park, what's good for our principality, and they have to get their turn. And maybe they don't feel comfortable telling me how they want it done, and when it's my turn, they're not going to do it, but they're going to get their turn. And if I remind myself of that, it becomes easier to say, all right, I'm going to stop bashing heads with them, I'm going to do it my way, and then when the populace elects them, I'm going to let them do it their way, and I ain't going to bash heads with them that way, and we'll figure out what's best for our group that way. And again, that doesn't avoid the hide and cry moments, because those still suck, but it's one way I take solace in it.
Anybody
You
else
just
want
have to have a good support system.
That helps, for sure.
So let me ask you this. We're going to transition a little bit to strategic planning. I got a couple questions for those. Dream big. I think we all can dream big, right? We all got this imaginary great Amtgard utopia, right? So, but how do I know what's fantasy and what's in the realm of the possible?
There's no
Whenever I'm
such
dreaming big.
there's no difference. Your fantasy is.
Cord wants, I see it in his eyes.
Like, before we start, let me take.
All right. There isn't. I mean, it can be as big as you can possibly imagine to be. And as long as you're just taking little steps to get there every day, you get closer and closer and closer. You may not ever actually reach it, but that reality is there. It's tangible. You could potentially reach it. The 5-year plan we have for our park is huge. Most people would think that there's just no way you're going to happen. But if you look at the steps we've taken over the last couple of years, you're like, oh, wow, you guys might actually accomplish that. And so project way out there. Say, this is the dream that I have. What tasks or what obstacles do I have to overcome to get there? What obstacles do I have to overcome that obstacle? And you build a ladder and you just climb it right into the sky.
Well, and the other thing, first I agree with Gorin 100%, but the second thing is, it's not over till the fat lady sings, and she's not warming up. I mean, the fact is, you set this dream big, you go for the biggest goal you ever come up with, and then the first time you fall a little short. Okay, that happens. There's no reason not to keep the dream. Figure out why you fell short. Figure out how to chase it and make it better. And again, continuous improvement is the only way to continue to grow in our game. A lot of you probably know that I have heavy involvement with SKDC. As long as that event has existed, we have had as a policy that next year will be better than this year. And we will take surveys, we will talk to people, we will review bids, and we will find ways to make it better. We'll hold all of our instructors accountable for making their classwork better. We'll figure out how to go to a different place that hasn't seen us so that we've got more engaged students who are more interested. And we haven't succeeded 100% in making every year better than the year before, but that's always our goal. And I think that's the key to dreaming big, is you dream big, but then you don't stop when you get there. And you don't stop if you fall short. Either way, you got to keep going.
We got to get into a lightning session, so if you got something real quick.
I was just going to say scale it as well. Make sure you plan the things that you have to do, and then the things that you want to do that are better, like you might have a feast where you have like 3 or 4 extra things you want to do. If you can only get to one of those, no one will notice that you didn't get to the others. So don't worry about it. Make sure you can scale yourself.
The big thing I would say is just, it's wonderful to dream big, but don't ignore what you're gonna have to do to get there. That's where a lot of people fail with regard to these sort of things, is they dream big, and then they don't really know what obstacles they're going to encounter getting from point A to Z for them. You have to pay attention and focus on those. And I mean, some of those will be insurmountable. You may unfortunately end up having to kind of scale back a little bit, but don't automatically just give up as soon as you actually see them as well. Review those obstacles. Make sure that you can at least take some review to attack them, or some way to try and actually, adjust for it.
So here's a question for you. The initial goal was to get kingdom. They got kingdom. Now what? That was mine.
Don't stop.
Yeah.
Keep getting kingdom.
Wrong goal.
So I'm gonna speak to this because I think we're both next year, so we're good people to talk to.
Well, it's, I know that, or, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay.
Like I said, we're both next year. Either way, I want
Generally
to-
speaking, that's a rung on your ladder towards your goal. If your goal is kingdom, you're not looking at it the right way. Because it's just a word on your contract. It doesn't mean anything else. If you have a kingdom of 15 people, what do you have? You have nothing. So, like, our goal for our principality is to become a professional organization, get tons of money from people that aren't in Amtgard so that we can fund Amtgard, to have our own land, our own permanent sites, and to have all these things to where our Amtgarders can basically have the best Amtgard experience that we can imagine. Or dream. And whether we're a kingdom or not has nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing. We can be principality for life, and still, we could outgrow every kingdom in Amtgard if we wanted to. Whether or not we're called a kingdom is no relevance. So, that's just, I just think that goal.
You won't be able to maintain that.
Michael.
So I'm going to disagree a little bit with Gorin.
Okay.
I think it's an acceptable interim goal. Okay, not only is it an acceptable interim goal, it's a valuable and good interim goal. Okay, now interim goal, you don't stop when you get there. The real goal is, how do we make Polaris the best place to play Amtgard in America? How do we make all of our people have fun every week? How do we make our people proud to say, I come from Polaris and I wear red, white, and blue, and that makes me awesome? Those things I care about. Becoming kingdom is going to be incidental if you do all those things, but it's a marker. And it's an important marker because all my people can read it, so I care about it. I want them to work for it because that marker helps them pull together when in other times they might not. And don't get me wrong, every good kingdom pulls together in various ways and in various times. I've lived in 3 now and going on 4 next year if everything works. Okay, so I get it, but not everybody pulls together all the time. Having something like the Kingdom Drive, which makes it real easy to pull together, is great because it teaches people the value of pulling together and makes it easier to get them to commit to pulling together again later. So you get Kingdom, what do you do next? Well, you certainly don't stop pulling together because you've just seen how good it is. You've just seen how much fun it is when the people who usually do this are now committed to doing this.
The really important thing is to realize that kingdom's not the top of the mountain.
Randall, anything to add?
I think in general, when you're trying to achieve stuff in an organization like Amtgard, where everything's ongoing, try to avoid interpreting everything or anything really as winning the game. Okay, because as soon as you actually have this mindset of winning the game, and then you win the game, you get kingdom, you become knighted, whatever, you're done. I mean, when somebody actually plays a video game, beats all of the achievements, beats the end boss, what do? They set the game aside, they go on to a new game. That's not what we want. We don't want to make kingdoms that are going to think, okay, we've won now, all right, let's go do something else. No, that's not what we want. And so I would just suggest for people who have that sort of mindset, we've met this goal, now what? Try not to make that goal the top of the mountain. Try not to make that winning. And have a longer term timeline. You say, what now? What do you want to do next within Amtgard? Okay. Think about that now and keep moving forward.
Randall, anything to add?
Yeah, they got it.
Okay. So we're coming at time. It's sort of that last minute hurrah on the way going out. So what? This is your party shot. Quick little 30 seconds, 1 minute spiel on what's the one thing that you hope people take away from the last hour that you've given us.
Talking about a lot of different stuff.
And only about a third of what we wanted to.
Right? So if you take away anything from here is that everything you do Everything that you want to do or dream can always be better. And the easiest way to achieve that is by doing it and engaging everyone around you to do it as well. And to don't ever think that there's a finish line. You're in the, like, you're just doing. And you just want to do better and better and better and better and better, and it doesn't stop. It's like a perpetual motion. You just go. And that's possible. There's no limit to what you can imagine and accomplish if you engage the people around you and you're all bought into the same, dream.
Okay, Michael?
So I'm gonna agree. I think the big key is do it, right? If the question is, how do I fix my park? How do I do this to improve Amtgard? How do I make a bigger, better event? How do I get my kingdom? How do I do everything? Well, you do it. You put in the effort. You sit down, make a project plan. I mean, the organizational stuff that Kent and Randall talked about, it's super important. But in the end, without the motivation to go do it, it's not enough either, okay? Literally the motivation is there, and every one of us can take ownership. I mean, it's awful easy, if you're from Dragon's Spine, to say, ooh, I sure would like X to happen, so I'll ask Randall to do it because he's good at doing everything. But the key is, that's not the level of ownership you need to really make wonderful, great things happen. Randall can make anything happen, I believe that. But he can't make everything happen. He's a very busy man, he can only do so much. You want really great things to happen? Engage him in your project, but you put in the work. It'll be twice as good.
Randall?
I want to give 2 practical things you can do for your parks to improve your Amtgard experience, and one we've touched on a little bit, one we've not. The first is, whatever it is you're working on an Amtgard, find one person as your co-conspirator. The big or small project doesn't matter. Find one other person who's excited like you are, that you can both bounce ideas off of, because when one of you's burned out, the other can encourage. So do that. If you don't have one, get one. The second thing, this is a practical management trick. If you are not auditing your prime minister on a monthly basis, start doing that now. Count the money, make sure the records are updated. You'll thank me in 10 years because any problems you've ever had with prime ministers will evaporate. Do that thing.
That's cool.
For me, the 2 points that I really want to stress here are communication and persistence. Again, get out there and do it, and then talk to people, okay? Use your words. This is one of the hardest things that people have a problem with here in Amtgard, okay? Everybody's an adult. Just use your words, talk to people, and you'll be able to actually get what you want.
Well, I'd say I really appreciate the time that you guys have given us. I know to take this much time out of an event, let alone middle of the day, is a little bit inconvenient, so I really appreciate that. So if I could, just everybody in attendance, a quick round of applause for the panel and support. Last night that it takes about probably 4 times as many people as you planned to actually pull something like this off, and it was amazing to see so many people come out and woodwork to help us out. So again, thanks to all the support team. Thank you to your time, and thank you to all the guests who joined us today for your questions, your input, and hope you found value added. So thanks again, everybody.